This is MIDIXO, and it's the cure to all of your MIDI dongle woes. Ever since the olden sepia-tone days of MIDI, we've been stuck with these 5-pin DIN cables and jacks. As you know, a lot of manufacturers now use 3.5mm stereo jacks instead, which should be great because we could just connect one piece of gear to another using a stereo cable that we picked up at the gas station. But it wasn't until last year that a standard came out for how to wire those TRS cables, so manufacturers either did it one way or they do it the other way. So if you have gear from the left side, you can't directly connect it to gear on the right side. What most manufacturers do is they include a dongle. So if you want to connect your BeatStep Pro to your XOXO, you use the dongle from Arturia, and then on the other end you use the dongle from Make Noise, and then in the middle you throw a chunky MIDI cable. This is where MIDIXO comes in. The module does a couple different things depending on how you set the jumpers. First thing it does is allow you to skip the dongles and the chunky MIDI cables and just use 1/8" stereo cables. For example, I could take the MIDI out from my BeatStep Pro, plug it into the input of MIDIXO, and then go from the output of MIDIXO to my Make Noise XOXO. The way the module works is if the two switches are in the same orientation, it's basically a MIDI pass-through, so anything that comes in the input jack goes out the output jack the same way. If the switches are in opposite positions, it allows gear that wouldn't normally be able to talk over 1/8" TRS cables to talk. The second way you can use the module is as a TRS MIDI breakout for Expert Sleeper's Disting Mark IV, FH2, or General CV. Here I'm using disting, and if I take MIDI out from another piece of gear and plug it into the input of MIDIXO, it goes straight into disting for any algorithms that take MIDI input. And likewise, any disting algorithms that output MIDI come out of the MIDIXO output jack. And you can use the switches to accommodate whatever gear is on the other end. In this mode, there's not a relationship between the two switches. The input switch works for the input jack, the output switch works for the output jack. And finally, if you're using disting like I am here, there's another way to use the module, which we'll just call mode 1+2 because it gives you the best of both worlds and does everything that I've described so far. If you go into the disting settings, you can turn on the software MIDI through. And at that point, if you're using any disting algorithms that deal with MIDI, MIDIXO works as I described for mode 2. But if you're using any algorithms that don't deal with MIDI, then it functions as I described in mode 1. That's about it. If you have any questions, email us or go to xoxomodular.com. Thanks.